Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on preparing for the unthinkable. I'm thrilled to have you all here today. My name is Noah Price, and I will be hosting today's session. So, in an era of unprecedented volatility, from supply chain disruptions to cyber threats and geopolitical shifts, the challenges facing businesses today are more complex than ever before. And our ability to navigate these uncertainties is crucial, not only for survival, but for thriving in such a dynamic landscape. Today's webinar aims to equip you with strategies and insights from some of the most experienced professionals in the field, and will explore risk mitigation, resilience, and proactive security measures that can help organizations stay ahead of potential threats. We have an exciting lineup today, and after my brief introduction, we'll hear from each of our distinguished speakers for about 15 minutes each. Following their presentations or their talks, we'll have a panel discussion where they will answer some pre-prepared questions and your questions. Please note that this webinar is being recorded and will be available on our g4s.com on-demand webinar page after this session. And if you have any questions during the session, please type them into the private chat, which is on the right-hand side of your screen. And if time permits, we will address some or all of your questions at the end. Okay, so let's start with our first speaker, retired Major General William Walker. So General Walker has had a distinguished career, having served as the Commanding General of the District of Columbia National Guard, Deputy Assistant Administrator for the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration, and Deputy Director of the National Intelligence Coordination Center. He was also the 38th Sergeant at Arms of the U.S. House of Representatives. He holds a top secret security clearance, and he is a lifelong member of the Council on Foreign Relations. As the 23rd Commanding General of the DC National Guard, he led over 29,000 guardsmen and provided security for the 59th presidential inauguration. And we are very fortunate to have him as our Chief Security Officer at Allied Universal. General Walker, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Noah. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I am absolutely thrilled to be with you today and speak about being prepared for the unthinkable, the unimaginable, the unpredictable, the impossible. My goal is to inspire thinking about threats, risks, vulnerabilities, and consequences, and how to prevent, and if that fails, how to reduce the effects of catastrophes, to include workplace violence, active assailants, insider threats, sabotage, and theft of proprietary information and acts of terrorism. I believe, based on my training and experience, that we must consider the unlikely, the seemingly impossible when we develop response plans. And our plans must be tested continually, regularly, to make sure we have trust and confidence in our ability to respond. It requires deliberate thinking and thinking with imagination about threats, risks, and consequences. How risk ready are we? What can we absorb? What impacts can we sustain? And what is our recovery time? Who are our partners? Who are we going to get to help us? Who has faced a situation like this before? And we have to have this already in play. We have to already be thinking about who will come to help us and who will we help. We have to have these coalitions, if you will, to think about surprise events. But we have to rehearse and practice. And a date that sticks out to me is April 14th, 1912. And you might remember that was the sinking of the Titanic. A lot of lives could have been saved if what was thought was that the Titanic was unsinkable. So it was unthinkable to practice getting into the lifeboats. And so when the moment of truth came, they failed at getting a number of people onto those lifeboats. So you have to have this you have to have foresight and the ability to plan deliberately about what could happen. December 7th, 1941, the United States was attacked by Japan. And I could go on with plenty of dates when there's been surprise that nobody saw coming. They just did not think about our ability to be surprised. When I say our, I mean everybody, not just the US, but everybody. We've all been surprised. What bothers me, what troubles me, is that we're surprised repeatedly. So in the US, we have a challenge with school shootings, and we just don't respond to them, in my opinion, effectively. So it's a matter of envisioning what could happen, get in front of it with a well-rehearsed plan of action, a response. There was a gentleman from the FBI named Shabinsky. Shabinsky said, anything that happens can happen again. Anything by accident that happens can happen again. And a gentleman named Primo Levi said, because it happened, it can happen again. So I believe we need to look at events that happen, crisis, catastrophes, man-made accidents, weather, severe weather, and think about when it happens again and be prepared for it, be prepared. So has the plan been validated? Have we tested it? Is it feasible? Have we challenged our assumptions? Do we have the right resources? Are we working with people with shared responsibility, mutual concerns? Have we figured out the best possible way? And have we done that intentionally with purpose and direction? So when we go into these recovery events, we have to be thinking about unity of effort, because everybody wants to help. Everybody's leaning forward, but there has to be an individual in charge. And we're fortunate to have the National Incident Management System in the US, and we also have the ICS system that helps us respond to events. But there are always going to be surprises. How prepared are we to deal with the surprises is what makes us resilient. So are we crisis prepared, or are we crisis prone? And that always centers around the leadership. So when I was in the Army, I made sure we were ready. And there's a difference between being ready and prepared. So I had a high degree of readiness. I took the physical fitness test. I went to the range to qualify with the weapons. And I did that so every single leader could see me doing it. And then they got it done as well. So you have to rehearse. You have to have after action reviews, and then learn the lessons. What went wrong? What went right? How do we capitalize on what went right? And how do we reduce what went wrong? And if we don't do that regularly, consistently, we leave ourselves, subject to have history repeat itself. So I will close there and look forward to your questions. But this is a needed conversation. These crises don't occur at our time and place of our choosing. It's a surprise. So we have to be prepared, and we have to be confident about it. And the best way to do that is to acquire experience by watching what happened to someone else. Thank you for the time, Noah. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you very much, General Walker, for that insightful presentation. I wholeheartedly agree with everything you said there. So our next speaker is Colin McLachlan. And Colin, star of Channel 4's SAS Who Dares Wins and Channel 5's Secrets of the SAS, has over 30 years of experience and security and risk experience. He joined the Army in 1989, passed SAS selection at the age of 23, and participated in high-profile missions, including Operation Certain Death in Sierra Leone and the UK's longest hostage siege in 2000. Surviving a hostage ordeal in Basra, he later consulted for elite groups and completed advanced studies in history and terrorism. Now, Colin is an accomplished speaker on resilience, leadership, and elite performance, and an ambassador for several charities. He co-founded Stoic Events, and his autobiography, The Pilgrim, releases in 2025. Colin, please take the stage.
Thanks very much, Noah, and yeah, good morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are, and thanks for having me today. I'll share my screen, just go through some slides if I can, which will help to create context for what I'm talking about. There we are. So hopefully everybody can see that. So thanks for having me. My mission today is just to tell you a little introduction about myself. That preparing for the unthinkable, which by definition would prevent you from preparing for it because you haven't thought about it. But the preparation and planning we can do for other things will help us for when this thing comes along. Like General Walker was alluding to, you know, the unsinkable ship, or the thing that we just don't think is going to come along. A bit about uncertainty, which is pretty much the background for that. Planning, motivation, resilience, that bounce back ability and everything that follows on after it, and teamwork and debrief. Quite often we forget the debrief part. We do the preparation, the planning, we go through it, and then the debrief part we sometimes miss. And after everything's finished, we'll get a chance to maybe ask the panel questions. Quite a lot of unlikely parallels. I'll put some of them up there. Some of those will be applicable, some not. But there's some pretty obvious ones given the background, and I've been involved in various security and surveillance roles within the military and since I've left as well. I don't take my word for it in terms of those parallels. There's G4S values, and there's the SAS ethos, and you can see there's some symmetry there. A lot of people know our motto in the SAS, who dares wins. Not very many people know our ethos, and the unrelenting pursuit of excellence is one of them. We've got some others there as well, and you can see there's quite a bit of symmetry there as well for obvious reasons. Who am I? Whenever I'm asked that question, I think back to a day I was locked in a room. It was locked from the outside. I couldn't get out. I was quite badly beaten. I had a fractured right eye socket. I couldn't see out my right eye. And every time I tried to see out a little window that was up in the top corner of the room, a guy would come in from outside and just lay into me again. And this went on for a couple of days. When I tell people that, they think that this was in military preparation in special forces or resistance to interrogation. But actually, this would prepare me for a career in the military and later on. I was only 12 or 13 years old, and the NSPCC and children's panels and social workers was all part of my world growing up at that age. So preparing for the unthinkable and building that resilience was already kind of embedded in me at that age. And physically, I'm just like you bash me, my bones will break, I'll bleed like anybody else. But mentally, I became this gatekeeper of my emotion. So by that, I mean, you couldn't make me sad or angry or scared or happy. I held the key that decided whether that could happen. You could try and make me turn the key, but it was always me that turned the key. So from a very early age, the emotional side and getting carried away with everything that came with that, I focused on controlling the controllables. And I knew that yesterday I got battered. I was still here today. I'd probably get battered today. I'd be here tomorrow. And eventually I'd be 16. I'd be able to leave. There's a school photograph there. And if I was there in person, I had my little laser. I'd try and get you to point me out. But I'm up there in the top row, third from the right in there, a little smile on my face. And I quite like this quote from Alder: your perspective in life comes from the cage you were held captive in. Now, you'd be glad to know I wasn't held captive in a cage or anything, but I think our values, our perspective, what's good and bad, right and wrong, I'm having a good day or a bad day, we're products of our immediate environment. And that may seem obvious, but as we grow up, that's our family unit, mum, dad, brothers, sisters. We go through work, colleagues, managers. We might travel, watch television, or even scroll through social media, and we throw all that in a pot. And that's our perspective. And that's how we decide what's good and bad and right and wrong, or I'm having a good day or a bad day. But it's only until we broaden our perspective or we shift it that we see where we sit. And, you know, that perspective's always really helped me. It's helped keep me grounded. It's never my best day or my worst day. It's somewhere in the middle. And that helps, keeps you thinking about the things that are your priorities. And that's what helps. And I sit on the children's panel now up in Scotland. I'm a chair for those. Environment's really important. Create an environment that gives you the best chance of success. Surrounding yourself with driven, motivated, ambitious people that want the best for you and the team, and having different facilities and platforms through which to share the success and even failure, because that's equally as important. We learn as much from that, and not being afraid to get access to support, whether that's on a technical or social basis, whatever that is, but being able to tap into those networks, because those networks, those third parties, become really important as these things go through. As a soldier at 15, I had to get special permission to join the army at 15. My mum wrote a letter to say I'd have to join the army, otherwise I'd be in a home or I'd be homeless. And I joined the army at 15, and I never saw my parents again. And this became my network, the military, the people left and right of me. And we all had to draw on each other. I was just a 15-year-old kid. I wasn't capable of an awful lot, but you put us all together and you give us an element of training, and we were greater than the sum of our parts. And when it comes down to it, that's who you need beside you. This was army life. I wasn't all spent topless or in the splits, but I just like putting some of these pictures up. But things like being the Queen's Butcher, which not a lot of people know about, guarding Edinburgh Castle, that sense of what the public see in terms of this facade at the front, well drilled, prepared, polished, all moving as one, and all the hard work that goes behind the scenes to make that happen. I put my papers in first selection without really knowing too much about it. We know more now thanks to books and TV shows. But I didn't really know anything about the SAS. I didn't have anybody from my unit that was in the SAS. And sometimes when you're preparing for something, you don't know what's in front of you. It can be quite daunting. We like to know. We like known quantities. And for me, when I walked into the cookhouse on day one of selection, there was 196 other people. And people far bigger, stronger, and faster than me. And one of the first things I did that was to really help me was I decided I'm not going to measure myself against anybody. Because I think sometimes you try and measure yourself against individuals, there's a chance you might come up short, even if you're in your own head. I just decided I'm going to do the best I can do, and that's going to be the measure. That's my measure for success. And that's always your template. You on your best day. There's no other measure. You have your own strengths and weaknesses. But that was to really help me, because I was never really at the back on selection. I was never really at the front. I was somewhere in the middle, just trying to survive and get by. It just so happened on day one, there was 196, and 6 months later, there was 12. But I still felt I was in the middle, just somewhere, just trying to get by. This picture is me just about that time when I passed selection, classic hands on the hips pose, next to the famous clock tower in Hereford. And it has the famous "We Are the Pilgrims" master poem by James Elroy Flecker. Stay the course. Always remember that you're the measure. Take one day at a time and visualize the end goal. Goals are always, I've always found them useful, whether they're small, medium, long term, whatever they are. And I've just tried to learn from people around me, people that were far better at doing stuff than I was. And that's created value for me within the team. Not long after I passed selection, I was only 23 when I passed selection. Normally you're closer to 30. And I was put on the counter-terrorist team, and I was about 24 by this time, and my pager went off, and I had to phone up Exchange, and I'm like, "Hello, Exchange, it's Colin, the new guy. My pagers just went off. It's 4 9s," and they said, "Yeah, it's a counter-terrorist incident. It's a hijacked plane coming into Stansted, and you're the closest one, so get there and hold the fort." I was like, "What?" They were like, "You need to get there and hold the fort. It's going to take the guys an hour and a half to get there from Hereford." And talk about preparing for the unthinkable. I took my stuff, I threw it in the Range Rover, and I hightailed it into Stansted. I mean, as I'm drawn into Stansted, there's already a bit of a cordon forming. There's the police, the chief superintendent. He's kind of looking at my Range Rover, and he's looking behind me. And he says, where's the rest of them? And in my deepest voice for a 24-year-old, I was like, yeah, I'm the advance party. Rest of the guys are just coming. I don't know why I was American all of a sudden, but as I pulled in, he said, okay, well, get the guys in the hangar and give the guys a brief in 10 minutes. I was like, yeah, we'll do. And I was thinking, what am I going to brief them on? I'm like 24. I've been here 3 months. And sometimes life's like that. It'll just take you and just drop you in at the deep end, sink or swim. So I come out into this big aircraft hangar. There's like 200 of them. Cobra, intelligence services, firearms, press, all looking at me apprehensively, probably how you're looking at me now. And I thought, right, there's only two ways this can go. So I said, ladies, gents, let's confirm the make and model of this aircraft as it comes in. Direct it over the tunnel so we can get underneath it, and let's disable the wheels and steering so it can't go anywhere. Let's drain all engine oil and fluid out of there, and let's get eyes and ears onto the plane, figure out exactly how many hostages, how many hostage takers, where they're from, weapons, arms, demands, any of the hostages, women, elderly, children, injured. Let's keep them off of there. Let's keep the press at bay. You all know your jobs. Go, go, go. And people went flying out different corners of the hangar. And I phoned up Exchange. I was like, guys, when are you coming? And they were like 40 minutes. And this picture at the bottom, there's a rather forlorn looking picture of me coming out the police truck as the only sniper there, just praying for 40 minutes. Nothing's going to happen. I'd have to single-handedly storm the plane and mess it all up. This is one of the longest UK counter-terrorist sieges in history. Went on for over 4 days and 4 nights. And luckily for us, it ended. We ended up crashing out towards the plane and managed to rescue all the hostages and arrest all the hostage takers. But that was my very first job. I was literally in the door 3 months. I was only 24. And although I wasn't head of the CT team or sniper commander, because I was the first on the scene, I just had to manage it and deal with it. So talk about preparing for the unthinkable. Reasons for success. Well, you've probably heard this: train hard, fight easy. You've probably heard that, one of these military analogies. We had the exact same aircraft behind us in the hangar and assaulted it over and over again. We failed a lot. We tried putting helis on the wings, gas in through the doors, enough Dems to blow the doors, until eventually there was only ever 2 ways we were going to assault the plane. But there was 2, the deliberate action and the immediate action. Now, the deliberate action, that's what we're going to do at a ground time of our choosing. But we also need an immediate action. What happens if they start killing hostages right now? Because those plans are going to look different for obvious reasons. And sometimes I think teams, organizations, security companies, they'll have a plan. They'll very rarely have an immediate action. What happens if your time, resources, manpower, budget gets cut in half now? What's the plan then? What happens if COVID comes along? Sometimes that unthinkable does come along. So the preparation will all help for when that time happens. But whether you think something went 100% well or 100% badly, make time for the debrief. Get people in a room. What went well? What can we do better? There's always stuff comes out of that. It's one of the things that the military do pretty well. Not long after that, I found myself in Sierra Leone. And the West Side Boys, who sound more like a boy band than any serious guerrilla outfit, had taken over Sierra Leone. They're quite a nasty bunch, lots of hostages, and they took 12 British soldiers hostage, and we got flown in to try and negotiate their release. And of course, it was unthinkable that British soldiers would be taken hostage somewhere when we were there in almost a kind of peacekeeping mode. And so we got flown in to start this period of negotiations. And we managed to get, I think, about 7 of the 12 released, but they had a lot of other hostages, a lot of civilian, female, child, Sierra Leone army hostages. And so we had to put this plan together to go and rescue them. And people were putting plans together, but the plan itself that ended up was put forward by quite a young sort of junior commander rather than any of the officers. And it was deemed so high risk that it's been nicknamed Operation Certain Death. Operation Barras was its real name, but nobody wants to volunteer for Operation Certain Death. I was volunteered as one of the 4-man recce team that was going to get dropped off in the swamps and go and find the camp. So for 10 days before we go into the jungle, we're not allowed to wash or brush our teeth. We've got to smell as one with the jungle. We get dropped off. We managed to find this camp and crawl around it on our bellies, sketching everything out. And then when we hear the guys coming in the helicopters, we just take out the sentries and just surround the hostages, protect them from any reattacks. Our orders at that time were to fight until we couldn't, and just engage in hand to hand until we ran out of bullets, until the guys could get there, but protect the hostages at all costs. The guys came in, we managed to clear the camp, eliminated 40 to 50 of the rebels, rescued all the hostages safely, but we lost one guy, Brad Tinian. He was shot and killed during the assault. And when we went back to the ship that night, we're all on a massive downer because we've lost Brad. And Director Special Forces gets flown onto the ship, and he gets us in a room and he said, look, guys, I know you're on a downer, you've lost Brad, but listen, you achieved the mission, you saved the lives of the hostages for the loss of one of you. And we were prepared to lose up to 8 of you to rescue the 5. Now, there'll be people on this call better at maths than me, but I was thinking 8 for a 5. But that's preparing for the unthinkable. It's the mission that counts, and that's what counts in the end. Fail to prepare, prepare to fail. That's another of these military analogies you've probably heard before, but one of the things the military is quite good at is training for the worst day. Training is close to the real thing. We use live rounds, we use live hostages, we don't have safety, we just do it for real. That way, when the real thing comes along, even if it's different or it's imaginal and how it's turned out, we've done some form of preparation for it. That time on recce and preparation is seldom wasted. Sometimes you have a very small time in the arena or when all the bells and whistles are going off. So everything you can do around that to give yourself the best chance is worth doing. 5Ps, 7Ps, whatever you have, but that prior prep and planning prevents poor performance. That's always really important. Our preparation, training, planning, it's kind of what the military do. But define success. What does success mean to you as an individual, as a team, as an organization? For us, it was simple. It was the mission. We said it twice. It's the last thing we heard before we went out the door. 9 times out of 10, save the lives of the hostages. Just save the lives of the hostages. Nothing else matters. Not long after that, found ourselves out in Afghanistan. Operation Trent is an operation so secret, it has its own Wikipedia page. So we did a few of these. They'd involve skydiving in at first light. It would be a large opium plantation. We'd destroy it, stop the drugs coming into Europe. Or it would be a foreign fighters training camp. We'd arrest or kill the foreign fighters that were there. This was both, and they were co-located. And there was only 8 of us up in a C-130 and a holding platform on oxygen, about 20,000 feet, waiting to go in. And there was only supposed to be about 20 fighters on target. And we got held for ages in this holding platform. And essentially, the pilot puts it on autopilot and he comes down to brief us. And he said, look, guys, we've had an intelligence update. There's over 100 fighters on target and there's only 8 of you. Are you still happy going in? We kind of look at each other and we're like, yeah. And he shakes us by the hand and he goes up into the cockpit and he puts on AC/DC Thunderstruck and he just puts the ramp down at the back. And we just high-five each other and just frog off the back. Pretty sure that we're toast, but what a way to go, right? Thunderstruck. Anyway, there was 8 of us. None of us were killed. There was only 4 injured, none too seriously. I got shot right through the water bottle. Don't remember much about it. I've still got the water bottle. It's not much use. But preparing for the unthinkable, when you're told that's you, you're going in and you've kind of made all your preparations with yourself. That's one of them. But that's Operation Trent. You can Google that. That's how secret that is. Fearlessness and consequences. Quite often when I tell my stories or missions, people might wrongly assume that I'm brave or fearless, or that you have to be to do those sorts of things. And you don't. I've never been brave in my life. I'm in the Life Preservation Society. And whenever you hear that, the air moves close to your ear, the bullets are that close, everything in me wants to go this way. I don't want to go this way, but I go this way not because I'm brave or fearless. I go this way because of the consequences. There's consequences to going this way and there's consequences to going that way. And actually the consequences to going that way are quite short. I'm going to find out in the next few seconds how that's going to work out. But the consequences to going that way are far greater, far longer. I'm going to take that with me for a while, maybe even the rest of my life. So sometimes if you have to make a difficult decision, you have to have that difficult conversation or something we always put off and we don't like to, you don't have to be brave or fearless. You just think about the consequences. What happens if I do? What happens if I don't? What happens if I do this? What happens if I do that? 9 times out of 10, that's always going to help you make the decision you were always supposed to make. Not long after that, I found myself out in Iraq. I was dressed in a dish dash and fake tan, fake hair dye, brown contact lenses. I was driving a local taxi around southern Iraq. I wasn't having a midlife crisis or epiphany or anything like that. This was Operation Hathor, and it was to look after MI6 out in southern Iraq. But as soon as we got out there, the nature of the game changed. It was deemed too dangerous for them to go out of the palace, and we had to run their network of agents for them. So on this particular day, we were tasked with taking 2 MI6 officers down to the Kuwait border and dropping them off. So a few days before it, did our due diligence, likely choke points, passed without incident. A couple of days later, we did it, dropped them off, and then as we were coming back in, returning to base, myself as the commander and Lee as my oppo, our car broke down. So I tried to fix it, bump it, raise people on the radio. I wasn't getting anything. So I did what any rational human being would do, and I hijacked a taxi. And the taxi comes along. I've got my M4. I've got some money to try and bribe him, and even he wouldn't take my Scottish banknotes. I gave him some US dollars. He's a bit more forthcoming, and we headed back in. But we got rolled up at the next checkpoint. They were waiting for us, got us out there, stripped naked, blindfold, handcuffed, mock executions at this checkpoint. And I'm just always delaying, playing for time, trying to keep the conversation going. And I've got this kind of blindfold on that I can just see underneath. And I can see the shadows of people. I know there's a window up here. I can still see my MP5K like a little Uzi in the corner. Still got the magazine on. So I know I could grab it, fire, jump out the window, but I'd be leaving Lee behind. And I'm the commander and I'm looking after Lee. So I thought, we're both getting out of it or we're both not. And eventually we get taken outside, and it's a big courtyard, and they're trying to get us in a white 4-door saloon. And I decide that's the time I'm going to fight. And as luck would have it, that's what saved me, because there was an ARAS set up at about 25,000 feet, and it was doing some video of something completely different. And it saw this riot going on at the police station. People might remember it was on Sky News, people climbing out of tanks on fire and everything. But there was 2 of us in there. And the MOD decided they'd put a tank through the wall and rescue us. So we got rescued at the 11th hour and taken back to the palace. They had a lot of pictures and video of me at the time, so I couldn't operate in that area anymore. So I got moved up to Baghdad and joined on to Task Force Black and Night did an exchange program with first Delta Force and then SEAL Team 6. And then I left the military altogether. But that was preparing for the unthinkable as well. This is a very simple cycle of success: plan, brief, execute, debrief, and it will help for that unthinkable. You have a plan, you include as many people as possible in that plan to give it the best chance of success. You have to brief as many people, even if it's just their part of what they need to know in that brief. The execution speaks for itself, but make time for this debrief way back at the planning phase, or you'll just never do it. It's one of the things we forget. We're always too busy. There's always something more important. But there's always something useful comes out of it. That was my military career, 89 to 2005. Probably would have stayed in for longer had it not been for circumstances. But it's the busiest the SES has been since the Second World War. More missions than at any other time. I like this quote from Churchill: success isn't final and failure's not fatal. It's the courage to continue that counts. We might make mistakes. The unthinkable might come along. But what's important is we always... We remember it, we train for it, and we prepare for it after it's happened. Like General Walker alluded to, when these things happen, they can happen again. So it's important we learn from it. Not long after that, I left the SES and went into Civilian Street. And for me, that was pretty much preparing for the unthinkable, because it's all I'd known to do since I was a 15-year-old boy. I looked after CNN out in Baghdad. And the video I'm about to play is a job that I got thrust on just right away as soon as I left. It was almost my first month of leaving the military. And I was looking after the CNN bureau chief. And I'm driving along to this roundabout. You might remember this roundabout's the one with the big tall Saddam statue that got pulled down. So I'm going to come around this roundabout, and I'm going to the 6 o'clock position right at the bottom of the screen there where the hotel is, the CNN hotel. And this is the biggest triple car bombing in the Middle East, 3 car bombs. The last one was a cement mixer full of explosives. Now, I'll let this play out, but what happens is I get to the 10 o'clock position on the roundabout, and the first of 3 car bombs goes off at the bottom of that roundabout, blowing a hole in that chicane wall. The bureau chief's now having kittens. He thinks they're coming for him personally, and he's telling us to get back out that road at the 10 o'clock position. But I'm staying put. I'm trying to remain calm, and I'm telling them that they're not after us, and there must be a different target. And the safest place to be is actually on that roundabout. Nobody ever wanted to bomb an empty roundabout. The second car bomb misses the target. It's supposed to go through the wall at the chicane at the bottom, and it goes past us, and it goes up the road behind us. And I know there's embassy buildings about 100 meters behind us, and it detonates, and it lifts the back end of the car up. Now he's having kittens. Now he's trying to get out the car, and I've got one hand on him and one hand on the radio transmission doing the commentary. And the third car bomb comes round, and it's a cement mixer loaded with explosives, and it comes through the hole at the bottom and detonates under the hotel and almost brings the hotel down. Now, I'm in a B6 armored vehicle. I've got windscreen this thick, and it lifted my whole car off the ground, cracked the windscreen from corner to corner. But I just sat up there, and you'll see me with the hazard sitting on the roundabout, and eventually we go in. I'll let this play out and let you see. There's the traffic coming round. The first thing you'll see is a little white van pull into the bottom 6 o'clock position of that roundabout, and it's going to blow a hole in that chicane wall there, just get rid of the defences. That's the little one. And then what's supposed to happen is the second vehicle is supposed to come through that hole and detonate in the foyer of the hotel, getting rid of the barbed wire and defences. But the guy's in a bit of a flap, and he drives right past us, nearly hits us, and goes up into that road at the 10 o'clock position. And that's him detonated. He's only about, not even 100 meters behind us. And now what happens is a cement mixer comes through, and you can just see it coming through the hole at the bottom of that chicane wall. And it's going to try and bring down the entire hotel. And if you've got pretty keen eyes, you might see up at the 10 o'clock position me just sitting with my hazards on up in that, just trying to remain cool and calm. The cement mixer can't quite get into the hotel now because the second car's not done its job. So it just tries to detonate and bring down the hotel. That lifted our whole B6 armored Jeep off the ground, the biggest car bomb in the Middle East. And I wish I had the radio commentary for you. I could play it out, and it makes it sound like I'm quite calm as I'm doing the commentary. I say that's a third car bomb went off. We're staying put on red 16, and we'll be through into the green zone once the smoke clears. Now, it sounds calm, and when I listen to it, I think I sound calm. I can assure you I wasn't. But when these things are going off and all the bells and whistles are happening and the unthinkable has happened, remember that you're the expert. You're the person that everyone should be listening to. And actually, having a sense of calm is quite contagious. If I'd have jumped out the car and started running off into the horizon, the sunset, I'm pretty sure everyone would have followed suit. But you're the expert, so try and just keep your head. Try and appear, even if you're not calm, to appear calm, because that in itself helps. We're more adaptable and versatile than we think. We're capable of far more. We can do a whole load of things. I've been involved in all sorts since I left the military, whether it's to do with TV or radio or surveillance, security, management consultancy, video games world. This is me as Arthur Morgan, the top center picture. Penetration testing, which isn't as exciting as it sounds, but that also really keeps me interested in various different industries. But we're more adaptable and versatile than we think. It was a privilege to serve, not in any sort of cheesy way, but in a way that you feel like you're giving back. You're saving lives, saving hostages. And it's one of the things that servicemen and women miss when they leave. The other thing is the people. It's the people left and right of you. And not on the good days. Anybody can stand next to you on the good days. It's the tough days, the battles, the wars, the unthinkable moments. If those people are still stood next to you, you can count on them as friends for life. That's it for me. It was a privilege to serve then, and it was a privilege to serve you today. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you very much, Colin. That was absolutely Fascinating. Thank you for sharing your experiences with us. So our final speaker today is Lionel D, a former member of Group Diane, DSU, the Belgium Counter-Terrorism Unit. With over 15 years of service as a breacher, explosive specialist and team leader, Lionel has been engaged in several high-risk hostage rescue missions, barricaded situations, and special house searches. He is one of the front line during the Brussels and Paris attacks. Lionel holds a master's degree in criminology from the University of Brussels. He has worked as head of security for several international corporations. He consults in multiple domains and has extensive expertise in extreme crisis management. In 2021, he authored the best-selling book, and I'm not going to read out the original language, but it translates as Terrorist Hunter, and maybe Lionel can give you the French name, which has been adapted into a television series. So please join me in welcoming Lionel.
Hi, everybody. You hear me, I suppose. Thank you for having me on this presentation. Very humbled to be part of this. Maybe I will share my PowerPoint. You see something?
Not yet, Lionel, no.
Not yet?
No.
Now it will work, I think.
There we are, got it.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Is it okay like this? Or not? Some technical issues today.
We're seeing it in build mode there.
Okay. Still seeing on build mode?
Not seeing anything at the moment. Do you want us to present for you?
Wait, one more moment. Is this okay?
It's still in build mode, but if you hit start presentation, top left button.
This one?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's presenting on another screen that you might have, because we're still seeing the
Sorry for that.
We can present for you, and you just say advanced slide. There we go.
Okay, like this?
Yeah.
Still there?
Yeah, we've got it. We can see the presentation as you want it.
Okay. Okay. So for today, we've talked about several things, and from my perspective and from my gonna say point of view, also like Colin, more operational point of view, I'm gonna talk about for the next 10 minutes about preparing the unthinkable. And the first idea that comes up when I think about this is that the two words preparing and unthinkable, in fact, these are two words that are a little bit controversial. I mean, it's a little bit what we say, contradictio in terminis. Preparing, the definition of preparing is to make or get something or someone ready for what will happen. So you prepare for what will come. And yeah, the definition of unthinkable is doing something so shocking that it cannot be imagined as possible. So when you think about these two definitions, it's a little bit opposite of each other. And that's why in special forces, special units, in my former unit, the selection and the recruitment, and of course, we could have a webinar only on that topic, but that's not the purpose here. But that's why in special units and special forces, the selection is so crucial and so selective, because you are searching or looking after men and sometimes women, of course, that are prepared to do the unthinkable. And that's the difficulty in these units, to find and to make the right mindset for these guys. I would have split up the unthinkable in on a timeline, and you have the event. If it comes, there is an event, and there is on the timeline the things that happens before the event, so a priori, before the event, and after the event, the things a posteriori. It's always, or I'm gonna say, it's always difficult to make plans and to imagine before the event what is gonna come. And a posteriori, so when there is a debriefing, when there is after action review, it's always easy to say you have to do, you would rather have to do this or that. In my former unit, we had a saying in French that said, and I'm gonna say it in French first, qui peut le plus, peut le moins. And the free translation for that is whom can do the most difficult part, the hardest part. If you can do the hardest part, you can easily do the easy part. And that's also the adagio and the philosophy that we use to work with in all our missions. So we aim to do to plan the hardest thing, and then eventually afterwards or on the field desescalate the mission and the plan. I will take, for example, I'm not going to say famous, but the RED, so the special house search we did in a counter-terrorism file in Belgium in 2015 in Verviers. We had to do their special house search in the middle of a town. In a short note, in a nutshell, we had to present this plan to, of course, our superiors, our hierarchy, but also to the federal prosecutor, because it was a big counter-terrorist file. And we had two plans. We had the plan A, what was, I'm gonna say, moreover, acceptable for everyone and politically correct. And we had a plan B that we presented also, of course, because we are loyal and transparent. But the plan B was, and sorry for the expression, but when shit hits the fan, what are we gonna do? Well, we plan this and that. And on the moment that we presented the two plans, well, you can imagine the first plan was accepted, but the second situation was not. Because we came with a plan with propelled grenades, with hiding behind ballistic vehicles with explosive devices on the windows and the doors, etc., etc. And that was a no-go for our superior hierarchy, but also for the political party in Belgium, because it was it was too hard. It was a like a combat zone in the middle of a town. Well, I can assure you, and afterwards, like I said, it's always easy to say yes, but this or that. These are the picture of the inside the house. It's the middle here in the picture, the middlest house with the blue door. This is the inside before and after the red. This also. It was plan B that we executed, because from the beginning of the house search, sorry for that, the shit hits the fan, and with plan A we never had saved the neighbors and the people right and left from this house. So sometimes you have to execute plans and have some skills that are unthinkable. But I'm going to say, as a first conclusion, the most difficult part here was not to, of course, there was the part to brainstorm together and to set on paper how we're going to execute this plan B. But the most difficult part was to sell this plan B, and it was not sold to or not really accepted to our to the highest levels of the political hierarchy, because it was too aggressive. Afterwards, of course, we had some congratulations and all was well, but before, and that's why I think this timeline also says much about the strategy to adopt before an event and also after an event. It was the most difficult part was to sell this plan B. In high risk mission, most of the time, and you probably know the acronym, it's KISS. Keep it simple and stupid. So this will say you have to employ your rational and common sense. You have to anticipate the unexpected, the unthinkable, and during the brainstorms, you have to stretch your imagination almost until the end, because it's always the plans or the things that you never thought about that will happen. That's also why during brainstorms we listen also to junior guys, to rookies that enters the platoon, because this is new blood, and they most of the time has good ideas about how what can happen, and how eventually we can execute this. That was it for me. Still there?
Yeah.
Noah?
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Lionel. And thank you to all our speakers for their insightful presentations. And I feel we're very privileged, in fact, I think, to hear all of your stories and your insights. So huge thanks from us. So we've now got a little bit of time for panel discussion, where I'll be asking some pre-prepared questions to our speakers. So first question to General Walker, if I may. How crucial is employee training in preparing for security incidents? What are some effective methods to ensure staff awareness and responsiveness to potential threats?
Yeah, thank you, Noah. Training for preparing for security incidents is indispensable. You have to train and train and train and practice. And how you really get that done, at least in my experience, is by leading through example. So the leaders are training individual leaders. When I was a 1-star, a 2-star, I went to the range. I did physical fitness. I trained and prepared along with my soldiers and airmen. They saw me doing it. They did it. It's and just let me back up a little bit about something I always want to talk about with being prepared. It's not always the plan prepared for the unexpected or the unthinkable. It's to think creatively and critically. So when you're planning and preparing, there's course of action development. When you develop, as Lionel and Colin said, you come up with different plan B, plan C. You might even have a plan D. That is really critical to think critically and think adaptively. Not only that, but what are the specific facts bearing on the situation? So your plan for the unthinkable is something you can follow or deviate from, but you're thinking, constantly thinking, and that's is this a novelty? You have no experience for it, but you have to do something, and that's where the preparation comes in. But I believe the training gives everybody on the team a common operating picture. Here is the objective. We're training to a standard. And what we hope to get is sustainable readiness. So preparation is continuous. That readiness is a snapshot in time. I hope that's helpful.
Very helpful. Thank you, General. Next question for Lionel. Lionel, what are the essential components of an effective risk assessment strategy for worst case security scenarios? How can organizations effectively prioritize these risks?
Yes, well, I think there are several points to discuss about this, but to sum, first of all, the threat analysis. So identify potential threats. What are the threats on that time, on that place, in that country? Who are there, etc. A second one is the vulnerability assessment. So identify in a whole picture how vulnerable are you for that specific threat, because the vulnerability is I'm going to say in accordance with the threat analysis. What are the consequences? This is, I think, one of the also elements. The third, maybe, what are the consequences of the threat? Is it high risk or not? Because of course you have a scale, and there are several threats, and you have to be prepared for the several threats, more or less, and even more in a I'm going to say corporate or private situation, the cost benefit analysis of this assessment. What is the cost? Not only on the financial cost, but the time cost, the I'm going to say the cost on your colleagues, etc., etc. So in a nutshell, I think these are the four main components of a effective risk. There are more, of course, but this is in my eyes of the four more important.
Thank you, Lionel. A question for Colin. Can you share best practices for creating a robust incident response plan, and how can organizations ensure swift and effective recovery from security breaches?
Yeah, so in terms of trying to keep that fairly brief, it's quite a big question, but against the backdrop of a risk assessment in terms of what are the risk and the consequences, then I think there's probably a couple of key things to drill down into to give yourself the best chance. No particular order, I'll go through a couple of them. One would be the team. You want a team that has experience, that know the chain of command, know the roles and responsibilities, and train accordingly. Second thing would be the plan. That's got to be easy to follow. How often have you seen these response plans that are this thick and take you 5 days to go through? Very simple, easy to follow. Flow charts and stuff are pretty good. You heard Lionel refer to KISS. I think that's important when it's time is of the essence. You have to keep it simple. Things to help detect, contain, eradicate, and then recover from that should all be part of that plan. Number 3 would be training and exercises. I think it's important that you make that as close to the real thing as possible. Otherwise, it just becomes what's the point when the real thing comes along. And train for real. You know, when we train with live hostages, live targets, live bullets, no safety, because that's what the real thing's going to be like, and it prepares us. The real thing is just an extension of training rather than catching us off track. Next thing would be on the monitor and detection side of things. So tech trends, anomalies, legal, regulatory stuff. Make sure that that's fit for purpose. Make sure it's current. Next thing would be comms, communications. So communications as important as they are anywhere. So those channels, the stakeholders, again, the legal side, that communication side has to be practiced. You don't want to have communication issues when you need it most. So have those things tied up early through training. A couple of other things. One would be the documentation, analysis of it, how you record, timelines, lessons learned from it. Those things are really important. Third parties, make sure that network of third parties, you've tried and tested those communications and bounce off them when it comes to, you know, training exercises, your due diligence. And lastly, be agile. Like we've said, quite often you can prepare as much as you like. Everybody prepares until they get punched in the face. So be able to adjust and pivot. If everyone has a level of training, then no matter what comes, they'll know what the priorities are and how to get there. And you hope to have trust in your people that we have what in the military we call mission command. There's the mission. How you get there is up to you, but here are the priorities, and you know that all already. And do that in collaboration with your third parties. And finally, once all that is done, make time for the debrief, because there's always stuff comes out of it.
Absolutely. Thank you, Colin. So listen, we're out of time, sadly, but I just want to say a big thank you to our speakers, General Walker, Colin McLaughlin and Lionel D, for sharing their valuable and insights and fascinating stories. As I said, we're really, really privileged. So thank you. And thank you to our attendees for joining the session today. Before we close, I'd just like to invite you to our next webinar, which is on Tuesday, the 13th of August, same time, 3:00 p.m. UK time, where we will discuss the role of leadership in fostering a good security culture. We look forward to seeing you there. Once again, thank you everybody for being here today. Stay safe, stay resilient, and we'll see you at the next event. Goodbye.